Hello, Internet. Gino, that Pinguino Greco here again with another episode of Deep Listens. And today we're going to be talking about Saints Row the Third, one of the wildest games I've ever played, and I thought it'd be a nice time to revisit it after Bayonetta because, you know, things were just too normal, and so we really needed to dial the crazy up a little bit. And I'm joined, as always, for this journey by Billy, the Butcher of Stillwater Rothert.
You know, I feel like if I were to pursue a sport that would be wildly different than something I've done in the past, it would be the sort of, what's the word I want? Like these like sort of performance wrestling like WWE and stuff like that. And if I did, I would 100% be a masked luchador. I don't know why there aren't more masked luchadors in the North American scene for wrestling. It is a style that has been underappreciated in the last, I guess, maybe 10, 20 years of pro wrestling.
There's always one. There's always at least one or two.
One, but it's like just Rey Mysterio.
It's like the token masked luchador.
And Sin Cara.
Like yeah, she is also
Sin Cara, I think, is a dude. I think
luchadoress? No, there's a female. There's a female wrestler now that is masked.
See, I just remember I saw a Scooby-Doo episode where it was Scooby-Doo meets the WWE, and Scooby, Shaggy, and the gang ran into John Cena and some other people, and I remember that I guess they were pushing Sin Cara at the time, the masked wrestler, and he would constantly show up, and they'd be like, Sin Cara, did you see him? And since he's a masked wrestler, he didn't say anything. He was just like, shrug. There was a ghost wrestler. It was pretty good. So that other voice you hear is that of Peter, the Walking Apocalypse Busby.
Yeah, no, that's, if I could pick like probably the most accurate nickname we've had so far in this 3 years of podcasting, that's probably the one. What's going on, everybody? Like Gino said, we were pretty chill after Bayonetta, so we ramped it back up with Saints Row the Third. Today's fun facts. Again, I've got two. I'm too generous with you people. So the first one starts fun and then gets less fun as it goes, unfortunately.
Oh no!
But the second one's fun the whole way through. So there are two facts about pigs. The first one's about war pigs. Yes, war pigs.
Wait. So the song?
No. That's disambiguated on Wikipedia, like actual pigs of war.
Okay, so we're not talking about the. There's
Metallica?
There's the cake version. There's a Metallica version, I think, and I think there's also the original one was Ozzy Osbourne. What is his band again? It's
Black
fine.
Sabbath.
Black Sabbath. I think Black Sabbath did the original, and then there have been multiple covers.
Well,
so it's not about
obviously
that.
The cake version's the best one because the cake version's always the best one.
That's true.
But
the cake
no,
version's
not about that. So one way to deal with war elephants is with war pigs.
What?
Yeah, supposedly elephants are terrified by the squeals of pigs. So like when the Romans were fighting General Pyrrhus of Pyrrhic victory fame, they would send out war pigs to scare the elephants back. Now, one way they would make the pigs squeal, this is where it gets less fun, is they would set them alight.
Oh, no.
Battle, yeah.
That's not fun.
No, that's not fun. But I have a more fun pig fact to make up for it.
I honestly was hoping for war mice to fight the war elephants.
I don't know what their mice count was. They definitely had tons of pigs, though. But another one. So, suitable for this podcast, pigs can actually play video games, apparently.
What?
Yeah, so in 1997, a researcher from Penn State University, woo, Penn State, taught pigs to learn video games. Basically, there was this dot that they had to maneuver into this area, and the area would get progressively smaller with each level. When they succeeded, they'd get a little treat. And the pigs did better than chimps. They did better than dogs. They were the best at this video game.
That's awesome and unnerving for you meat eaters. So think about that.
What was the control scheme? Like what was a
snout-based joystick.
Okay.
You can see there. You can look it up. There are videos on YouTube.
Wait, I hope it was a special joystick that matched the snout.
It was like it turned their snout into an outlet, and they kind of just plugged it in.
Oh, that'd be so good. Either that or a DDR pad.
I feel nothing better or worse about my meat eating habits. So sorry, Gino. Nice try though.
I think bonus third fact. I think pork is actually the most widely consumed meat in the world. So
I feel like, Billy, this just says that if a pig ever was to get better than you at video games, morally you're okay with just taking out the competition.
Well, morally, yeah, but I wouldn't, because I think pork is my least favorite meat.
I like pork.
Bacon is... Everyone likes bacon.
Bacon's not pork.
What?
Bacon's bacon.
Huh?
Whatever.
Okay.
So about
fine.
Saints Row the Third.
Time for Saints Row the Third, but before Saints Row the Third, it's time for feedback.
What?
Feedback. We've got an email from someone who keeps sending us emails even though they have other ways to reach us. But if you want to reach us and don't have other ways to reach us, you can do so at DeepListensPod or at ThatPinguino on Twitter, deeplistens.libsyn.com. You can use our comment section or deeplistenspodcast@gmail.com. And you can sound something like this. Chris Zombie Pie Redacted. He sent an email and he says, this is in all caps. I need to emphasize this. So let me just do this correctly. If you're playing Saints Row 3 and don't rescue Shaundi, you fuck up. The song plays Bonnie Tyler for a fucking reason. The song isn't titled, I Need Your Help. I need you to help Hulk Hogan fulfill his quest for vengeance. She needs a hero. But honestly, for me, the final sequence is up there with the Kanye West moment or the Tron level. It's a happy marriage of music, visuals, and wacky drama. Also, the ending after you rescue Shaundi playfully reminds you Saints Row takes place in the same universe as Red Faction. The movie they're making is a parody of Red Faction Guerrilla. Yeah, the Ultor Corporation that I think like the Saints merge with or something, or they're a recurring enemy, that is the same corporation from Red Faction.
Okay.
So I guess the Saints Row series is taking place in the past of Red Faction universe or something.
Sure.
But cool. It's a nice little wrinkle. So thank you, ZP. Thank you for still sending in emails to the show despite regularly appearing on this show. And if you want to sound like him, send us feedback. We enjoy feedback, emails, questions. We are open. And without further ado, it's time to talk about Saints Row the Third. Billy, what's Saints Row the Third?
Holy shit. Okay, so Saints Row the Third is the 6th game in the franchise, weirdly, which is kind of weird because they're counting Saints Row, the original, and then like Saints Row, like the mobile port, as like a different game or something. Then there was Saints Row 2 on a mobile port, and then there was like an in-between Saints Row game, and then there was Saints Row
Chain of Memories.
Yeah, I think that's what it was called. But this is the 6th release that has a Saints Row title, if we'll call it that, and it is the 3rd installment of the game's overarching franchise narrative, question mark, if you want to call it that. I guess we're gonna have to. Well, to talk about Saints Row the Third, just real quick, like 30-second background on Saints Row 1 and 2. I had to do a little bit of research, so I gave myself some context. OG Saints Row was in many ways a copycat of a beloved Grand Theft Auto franchise. Borrowed a lot of the same elements, did a lot of the same things. You have an up-and-coming gang called the Third Street Saints, and they're just trying to make it in the world and make a name for themselves in the city of Stillwater. Saints Row 1 events happen. They do. That's really cool. All right, cool. Saints Row was like a different Grand Theft Auto copycat. Neat. Saints Row 2 says, wow, we made a great game. We got to make things different. So like instead of making another like game, let's just like turn up the crazy. Like, all right. Let's
differentiate.
Let's try to roll with that. Grand Theft Auto has like the bootstraps, kind of like social commentaries and like some real economic things that it's trying to grapple with, and like some good like racial and cultural boundaries they're trying to. No, let's just add some crazy. Okay, so Saints Row 2 takes a cast of characters, some of which transferred from Saints Row 1 to Saints Row 2, some of which are brand new to that game, and says, let's turn all these people into essentially like gods of an action film, a la The Expendables. Okay, great. You've made a different game. And they ran into this problem, which is, okay, we've turned our cast of characters basically into action hero gods. We want to release a third game. How do we do that? They'd also like taken over their entire city, and they had gone so far as I think at the end of Saints Row 2, you get like a branding, like a franchise. It's like
you form a media empire.
Yeah, you form a media empire. So how do you go from that to a third game? Okay, well here we get the opening sequence of Saints Row the Third. It's a typical after weekday afternoon. Some of the Third Street Saints are going to go rob a bank. Turns out they picked the wrong bank. Uh-oh. And this bank is controlled.
Well, I feel like it's important to mention they are robbing a bank while having an actor who is in character, who is studying for a role as Johnny Gat, a member of the Saints. He is trying to get deep into character by going with them on the bank robbery so he can method act Johnny Gat in Gangsters in Space.
But then aren't they also wearing like Johnny Gat giant?
They are also robbing the bank while disguised as themselves.
And then I think the actor's like, oh, so this is like ultra postmodernism.
Yeah.
Like that was his response. I was like, okay.
Yep. And as they're robbing the bank, because they are so popular, there are people who will ask you for autographs as you're robbing the bank. There are people, the cops, when they come to stop you, say, please autograph and put down your guns. We need to take you in, and my son would love a picture with you, Johnny.
So it turns out this routine, just run-of-the-mill bank robbery goes awry.
So in this routine bank robbery, you don't just try to break open the safe. You rip open the top of the bank and try to helicopter the safe out.
Very Ocean's 13.
Definitely a little bit of Ocean's 13 thrown in there. So what happens is there's this criminal organization known as the Syndicate. The Syndicate is a combination of 3 different gangs that have become like a conglomerate of gangs, and they have farther reaching tendrils than just Stillwater. Turns out the the Third Street Saints gang, which had in many cases a sort of a pseudo-diplomatic immunity in their own city, no longer had that immunity because they were in fact arrested. And they said, well, wait a second, we've paid off the right people. How come we're in jail right now? The response was simply, someone paid more. Oh no, the plot thickens. So how do you take these godlike gang members and create a new story out of them? Well, you have to take them in, you have to just uproot them, plant them into a new city that they have no credibility in, and start the whole fucking thing over. And that's where we get the events of Saints Row the Third. You're presented with 3 major story arcs from early in the game. Take down each of these 3 major gangs, make a new name for yourself in a new city, basically just run it back all the way, hit repeat on the whole track, the whole album, and now we have Saints Row the Third.
Yes. And Saints Row the Third.
Did I leave anything out? Like, was that that's actually how this game starts, right?
That's it.
Yeah.
That's
the first mission. The first mission is rob a bank while dressed as yourselves and showing an actor how to play you in a movie. The second mission is freaking nuts, too, because you're on a plane and the Syndicate's holding you at gunpoint, and then you decide to not take their offer. You break out of the plane, and then much of the level is done in free fall.
Until, that is, you dive back into the plane.
You dive into is it the same plane or another plane?
It's the same plane because you go after the guy.
Okay, yep. You go, the same plane comes, and they loop around, I guess, and try to hit you with the plane, but you shoot out the windshield and then free fall through the plane for a second, and then come out with a parachute on the other side. And you throw one of your gang members, Shondi, you let her go, and then you do some gun battling, you catch her, and then you throw her again, break through this plane a second time, get another parachute, and catch her a second time.
And let's just emphasize, this is the second level. We're like 15 minutes into the game, maybe?
Yeah, you've been playing for about 15 minutes. God, this game starts off strong.
Oof.
I mean,
it starts off at level 11. Like, it just goes 0 to 11 in the first 10 minutes.
Yeah, like Bayonetta, the first thing is like you're falling on a clock tower fighting angels as you're free falling through the air. Saints Row is about that. It starts at about the same place.
Yeah, pretty much. Something about free fall just amps things up.
if you want to start a game right, you're in free fall. So I think Saints Row the Third,
Tetris taught us that much.
Yes, it did. Tetris doesn't expect you. It doesn't have a tutorial. Tetris is like figure it out.
It just drops you in free fall.
So I think one of the interesting things with Saints Row the Third, outside of like the first mission and getting you up to speed, it's a pretty traditional third-person action game. The developer we didn't mention, but the developer was Deep Silver Volition. They were working for THQ at the time, now defunct. Rest in peace, Toy Headquarters. But in this game, you're able to create your own character, and the created character is pretty robust. You can make male, female are the choices, but your appearance does not have to match necessarily whatever gender you pick, and your voice definitely doesn't have to match. So you can go ahead and, or I should say, your appearance will be changed by what gender you pick, but your voice is agnostic to whatever you pick. So you can pick a male-sounding voice with a female body, vice versa. It doesn't really matter. And there are 7 choices for voices. There's 3 male voices, 3 female, and a zombie voice. And you can be a zombie. So it's fair to mention also, when you're picking like your facial features and all those things, when you get to skin color, there's a few options for different like racial backgrounds. You can pick like Asian, Caucasian, African American, Hispanic, and then there's just a bunch of colors that just,
like neon green. You can just be iridescent. You can
sapphire,
silver,
jolly green giant, onyx. What choices did you make for your characters?
I want to talk about this later because I made really specific character choices that's going to talk about really important stuff.
Billy's just shutting it down. It's like, no.
Why don't we just get into it? What character did you make?
I emulated a person in real life, and it made part of the choices that I made with my character had like meaningful impact that I want to talk about later in the game, but I won't spoil it now.
Okay. Fine, Pete.
I was a very large, muscly silver man.
Okay, well, I'll say I made a brunette female, of like pretty like modest physical features and, kind of vanilla looking. I think I gave her like one cool tattoo just to be a little edgy.
Okay.
She was a brunette, light, generally light skin, and I think one tattoo. Yeah, that was where I went.
Yeah, I went with a lady with orange hair. At first, she was orange with mint green skin, and that was a little too much. My wife walked by and said, "Why does she look like she's melting?" And that was a great point. Looked like she'd been left in the sun too long, and that wasn't great. So I went back and changed it up a little bit, just gave her human-looking skin, and that solved a lot of the problems. But I gave her a nice, for makeup, I gave her the like superhero mask-looking face makeup. So I thought that was pretty good. And I chose, I think, the first female voice. Because the voices are like Caucasian sounding person, some sort of like ethnic sounding person. Then there's a Russian accent for women and a British accent or a Cockney British accent for the male voice, and then there's zombie. So I just thought that just default. Keep it pretty common.
So you don't want to pick something that's going to get on your nerves halfway through either.
Yeah, I picked Cockney British the first time I played this game, and it was excellent. The voice actors all nailed it.
The voice actors are noteworthy because the generic male voice is Troy Baker, who's done basically every generic male voice in the last like 5 AAA video game. He was Joel from Last of Us. He was in Uncharted. He was Booker, whatever his face was, from BioShock Infinite.
Booker DeWitt.
Yeah, Booker DeWitt. And the female voice is Laura Bailey, who is another very well-established voice actress. And
prolific.
Yeah, she's been in a lot of stuff. Everything from like Dragon Ball Z to Full Metal Alchemist, Street Fighter.
Who is
She's
she
on,
in Full Metal Alchemist? Do you know?
Lust.
Okay. In FMA Brotherhood.
Yeah, and her husband Travis Willingham was Roy Mustang.
Oh, cool.
They've been on a ton of stuff together.
Very cool.
Like she was Trunks in Dragon Ball Z, and he was Cell, and she is Chun-Li in Street Fighter 4 and Beyond, and he is Guile in Street Fighter 4 and Beyond, and she was Lust in Full Metal Alchemist, and he was Roy Mustang. They've done like a ton of like couples voiceovers.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Well, once I got my character all done up, I just want to emphasize just one thing with the gameplay. There's the run button, and the run button's really the fun button. As long as you're hitting the run button, good things tend to happen. Everything that you can do when you're holding the run button is just done way better.
Yeah.
So, like, if you hold the run button and jack a car, you just jump through the nearest window and just are immediately driving. Whereas if you press the jack car button, you will walk up casually and open the door. And if you run up to someone and press, I think you click in the right thumbstick on a controller, you will melee them. You will do a running melee attack. I don't know if you...
Like a drop kick or something crazy and stuff. Yeah.
Drop kick, stiff arm, jump on their head and ride them down. You can surf on them. They're excellent. They're all so good.
Saints Row the Third is really a game that's meant to be played like really as quickly as possible. I guess would be the best way to describe it. You always want to be moving at top speed.
Yeah, it kind of reminded me of like an Assassin's Creed game or like a Devil May Cry game. Obviously, there are parts of Assassin's Creed where you are doing slow, methodical, stealthy stuff, but once the combat starts, you're in it. And when you're in a chase scene, you're moving. You're just doing action, action, action. And similar to an Assassin's Creed game, when you're pressing like the run or action button, things just happen fluidly, kind of like they do in Saints Row the Third.
Yeah, and as you're performing things quickly, you're getting chains and combos, which give you respect. And respect is how you level up in this game. So if you shoot a dude in the head, respect. If
you almost get in a head-on collision, almost, respect.
Respect. If you're driving in the wrong lane, respect.
Two wheels,
respect. Kill a very big person, respect.
And multi-kill rocket launcher, respect.
As you're doing those, you get more respect, which unlocks new abilities to purchase, and then the second currency is money. And you get money a bunch of different ways. Killing dudes will get you money. All the story missions and most of the side missions will get you money.
Like blowing up choppers and like tanks and stuff give you cash.
Yeah, but there is also kind of a real estate system built into the game where as you take over different parts of the city, you will get access to there are stores, and you can buy every store in the game. And then there are just pieces of real estate that you can buy.
It's like in its way, it's a weirdly realistic system, only insofar as I mean, we don't need to get too far into Marxist theory, right? I mean,
get as deep as you want.
That's why I'm here. But
this is deep listens, Pete. Don't hold back.
All right. So the interesting thing about capitalism from a Marxist perspective, at the very least, is that the rate of profit tends to drop. So you need a larger and larger piece of capital in order to realize profits. So it's interesting in Saints Row the Third that the more capital you have, the easier it is to get more. Right, which makes intuitive sense, but it's interesting that the game sort of sets up this premise where you're basically you're a capitalist, right? You're exploiting your existing capital in order to make more through rent.
Yes, and it's basically it's money laundering. So you're taking your dirty money, buying real estate, and then taking in regular rent, and by making that one transaction on an hourly basis. And I don't know if it's in-game hours or actual hours. I feel like it's in-game hours.
I think it's in-game hours.
You get to just collect laundered money, and that is your main source of income. You tend to make way more money through money laundering than you do by actually completing missions. And so it allows you to just have constant influxes of cash to buy new upgrades and new abilities. And it really incentivizes you to explore the world and just play around versus necessarily mainlining everything, because you will get better access to items and abilities if you tool around a little bit.
I found myself quickly realizing that money was never going to be a problem.
No.
Yeah. It's never a problem.
Buy building. That's like, I think this is, when we talk about the comparison to Grand Theft Auto, and I think it's obvious in the ways it's over the top, but I think the relationship between the protagonist and money is sort of the most interesting thing here, or maybe not most interesting, but perhaps symptomatic of the rest of the differences between the game. Insofar as in like Grand Theft Auto, you're doing basically menial tasks for a large portion of the game, trying to build what amounts to a nest egg. Whereas in Saints Row the Third, it's more like, all right, you're rich to start, money's not going to get in your way, let's go do cool shit.
Yeah.
I liked how Grand Theft Auto Vice City handled the money system, and I think they continued parts of this in other iterations of GTA, but you would have something very similar in Vice City where you would become, I guess, either you'd have like an organization or an establishment under your thumb, or you become integrated in it, and you would get paid by them regularly, but you'd have to go pick it up. Like you'd have to go like stop at the location, and there'd be like a little like batch of money waiting for you as like a pickup outside like the front door. So like they also had ways to generate recurring income, but you had to go get it. Saints Row just like direct deposit.
Yep. They have a nice banking system in Stillwater,
Yeah, I guess.
in Steelport.
Yeah, because you left Stillwater where your empire was, and now you're in a new city, Steelport. Totally different from Stillwater. Not the same
even
at all.
remotely similar. Yeah.
Nope.
Yes. And I think the only systems that I think are worth calling out, I found that the regenerating health, it's regenerating health because this was a mid-2000s game, and by law it had to have regenerating health. And I found that most of the upgrades that you get just basically allow the game to scale properly. If you don't buy them, the game just becomes unfun. Like, if you don't buy the reduced damage from explosions or fire or bullets, eventually, as you get later and later into the game, you will just get annihilated by most of the enemies.
There's so many bullets.
There's just too many bullets and lasers. And
Steelport's primary industry is bullets, it seems.
yes.
And disposable SWAT members and like disposable, just like the mountain of bodies that this game produces, I found a little bit alarming.
Yeah, it's egregious at certain points.
Yeah. At a certain point, the bullets and the enemies got so much that sometimes, you know how much like Grand Theft Auto in Saints Row the Third, as you play, if you commit crimes or do things like kill enemy gang members, you will get attention, you'll get heat from the people that you're wronging. So if you run over some civilians, cops will come after you. If you shoot an enemy gang member, the opposing gangs will start coming after you. And once it gets up to like level 5, which is the max, they're calling in air support. Yeah. There are just cars. Anytime you try to drive, there are like roadblocks that appear. There are cars that will just like appear in front of you and try to cut you off. For one mission, I had level 5 on both cops and rival gangs, and it was so hot that the opposing cars, they're supposed to like appear in front of you and then try and cut you off. They would actually spawn directly in my path. They would appear, and I'd hit them immediately because there was no way to avoid them because they spawned literally in front of me. So this game, it gets intense in spots. And I feel like as much as some of the upgrades make you feel like you're getting stronger and overpowered, and it unlocks options like getting to call someone and have them deliver you a helicopter is pretty great. Certain nice usability options like that, super cool, but other ones that feel like they should make your character more powerful end up just making you feel status quo. Mm-hmm. Which is an interesting design decision. It's an interesting way of, I guess it's a little bit of the Red Queen hypothesis. You have to run as fast as you can just to stay in the same place.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, so it's an interesting design. I like the way the game plays for the most part, though I feel like the combat in general just wears thin the further you go into the game and the more the game relies on it.
Yeah, it's mostly, I don't know, it seemed to me it's mostly like just picking headshots, depending on what weapon you use.
Yeah, and some moments where you just like get a tank. I found that if I was in a tank or a vehicle, the game was pretty fun because it's just a power trip.
Oh, yeah.
Because nothing can hurt you.
No.
And then anytime I was outside of those things and had to deal with those other things, I just ran into, like, I was low on ammo, or I needed to be judicious about what weapons I was shooting. And that's not really where the game's strength is. The game's strength is power trip. So I think that's it with most of the systems. Let's get into the crazy.
Well, a good transition to the crazy is, since you're talking about power system, we should mention that this the advertising for this game was advertised as being a crazy shit show. Like, they didn't hold, like, they were very honest with what they were marketing. And this game is like bookended by like the Kanye West song Power. Yes. I think that's what the title of the song is.
Yeah, I was about to get to that.
It sets the tone the right way. They use it in all their commercials and their marketing. The game itself, I think, part of the opening scene that plays the song, it's on the radio in the cars that you drive. Like, Kanye made some money on this game.
He did. And this was early, I guess it's late enough in his career. He was definitely one of the best rappers alive. I was surprised to hear his songs in a game like this, but I guess it's big enough that they could afford the license.
Yeah. I'm sure it wasn't cheap. I'm sure Kanye wasn't just like, oh yeah, I'm a huge fan of the Saints franchise. Toss that bad boy in.
Maybe he was, though. We don't know.
He could be. That's true. I don't know what his life's like.
I don't feel like researching this, so we'll just say Kanye got paid.
Yeah, this was pre-Yeezus, so I'm sure at that point he was playing this game and he's just like, I am a god. It makes sense.
Yeah,
so I was going to actually transition. The third mission in this game is you robbing a military depot and stealing the controls for a drone, a UAV drone. So that's the third mission. You get access to airstrikes. The fourth mission has you taking on the Syndicate and taking one of their big buildings, basically, as your own. And that one has you parachuting out of a helicopter while Kanye West's Power plays in the background, and you gun down everyone in that building and take it for yourself.
At this point, had they told us the name of the three gangs yet? Had they introduced those yet?
Yeah, they're the Morningstar, the Deckers, and the Luchadors.
Yeah, so the Morningstar people, they all sort of divide up different types of crime in Steelport. The Morningstars handle the sort of like sexual crime, like prostitution and trafficking and stuff. That's their like primary thing. They'll run run some BDSM clubs and stuff like that. The Luchadors will handle things like arms dealing and drugs. And the
gambling.
Gambling. And the Deckers will handle more like cybercrime, money laundering, other kinds of like electronic fraud and stuff like that. They'll handle those kinds of crime. And so that kind of like chops up the three types of crime that you'll find in Steelport. And I think, is it the Morningstar the first people that you go mess with?
Yeah, the Morningstar are the first. They are run by Philippe Loren at first. He kills Johnny Gat, and so you swear to take revenge on him. And before you take him on, you get some cool sequences. They show you all these different missions that you can perform, like taking down rival gangs. Like if they've got a hotspot, you can go in and kill everyone, and then that spot becomes yours, and you get some control of the city and some hourly money. There's like I don't think you get insurance fraud. There's insurance fraud. There's trafficking where you pick people up. There's helicopter attacks, escort missions, snatch where you take pimps and steal their prostitutes, trailblazing where you drive a car on fire and you have to hit people. Guardian Angel, Professor Genki's Super Ethical Reality Climax. You're on a Japanese game show where you have to murder mascots.
Yeah,
which is pretty good.
But you can't. What can't you shoot?
You can't shoot pandas. Pandas are unethical.
That's unethical.
But if you shoot tigers, that's ethical. There's mayhem, tank mayhem, assassination, vehicle theft, all these different submissions, and they will force you to do each of them at least once.
Yeah.
And on the way to, I think, like they showed when they introduce you to either the gun system or the clothing system, you get a cool moment where you and Pierce, one of the original gang members, sing "What I Got" by Sublime.
All of it. They sing the whole song.
Yeah.
And it's incredible.
They have a duet, and you're just driving and singing this song with your buddy.
which is really Sublime's best song as far as I'm concerned.
It might as well be their only song because they're not that good. Anyway,
It's that and Santeria are the two.
Yeah, that
ones.
song's garbage and overplayed. But what I liked about
hot.
what I liked about this game is there were parts of this game that were well thought out and lots of effort went into, and parts of the game that I think were done pretty lazily. This was one that I think they put a lot of effort in. The sort of like discrete character interactions. I think there's actually not enough of this in games. You don't get playful banter between main cast characters like you do in Saints Row the Third. It was refreshing, honestly.
Yeah,
I mean, as
like
much
buddies.
they were like cracking jokes. They were, they were just, shooting the shit and picking fun of me, like making fun of each other. It was great. It felt really organic.
Yeah, like one of the recurring themes is you're calling for a mission and Pierce is playing chess with Oleg, this dude who you eventually recruit, and you're just interrupting their chess games constantly.
There's all kinds of witty, playful banter between the characters. I think that script had to get played out, was like very well thought out. There's also a lot of times where you can interact with the environment and your character will respond. And I've watched some other videos because when I chose to stop playing the game at a certain point, but I wanted to see how it ended, and I watched a male character, and like there are some things that my female character responded to differently in the game than like the male character did. Like there's like different lines of dialogue. They had to basically write the entire protagonist's script almost twice. I mean, like the main story stuff is the same, but in a lot of ways all the little minutia that they could run up to and like, open a door and see something weird and they'll respond with like a line of dialogue. It was all different for the different kinds of characters. Really, really, really well thought out. Really, really good.
Yeah. And I think that just those moments of humanity in a game that is so absurd is pretty great. Now, the things that you're doing are often ridiculous and in some ways reprehensible, and sometimes their chillness can be off-putting and out of place. And I think the Morningstar section is where that comes across the most. So in the Morningstar section at first, you're just trying to take out Philippe Loren. And you actually take him out pretty early. You break into the Morningstar's base of operations, and you drop just like a giant chandelier or like a giant ball on him.
Yeah, it's
crush him.
It's like a sculpture. You'd like fall like 6 stories on this thing too.
Yeah, you fall on it, you land on him. He's like lighting a cigarette, and then it lands on him and crushes him. And as you escape, you get to choose. Oh, there's actually a choice system. There's a moral choice system. In this
we didn't
game,
talk about that.
Well, I mean, it doesn't do much.
I don't know.
Honestly.
I wouldn't call it necessarily a moral choice system because
it's a choice system.
They're usually all immoral.
It's usually based on reward now or extended reward over time.
Yeah, or some like one item or a different item.
Yeah.
For example, like I guess like you're saying, Pete, one of the systems was like get better vehicles or get cheaper guns.
Right.
That's one of the ultimate wars. But they don't just say that explicitly. They did in that one particular case that I mentioned. But they usually say, like, save this person or kill some other person. They'll give you a choice, and like behind it, there's some kind of benefit, and it'll tell you in the game, like maybe you'll be standing in front of 2 people and you have to save one or the other, or some choice similar to that. But in like a text box, it'll say, here's what happens if you choose this option.
Yeah, it's not Mass Effect,
No.
It's not that gray. Mass Effect isn't even that gray, but whatever gray there is, there's more of it in Mass Effect. This game's like, do you blow up the Morningstar's base of operation, which will get you respect? Or do you keep it and it will give you a bonus to money? And I thought respect was more valuable than money. Turned out, I think, to be true. But you keep getting these options. And once you take out Philippe, then taking down each of the rival gangs starts in earnest. And then you need to recruit different experts in those gangs to help you take them down. You recruit Zemos, a pimp who speaks with autotune. Who his voice is amazing.
He had some sort of like tracheotomy surgery or something.
Yep.
You can see that the character had that, and instead of
They actually explain it.
No,
Yeah.
But it's clear in his character. They did.
He had a tracheotomy. Well, they don't explain it out loud, but he had a tracheotomy, and then his pimp cane has a microphone on the end of it, and so he holds it up to the hole, and then his voice comes out.
Right.
It's similar to one of the other vocal generators, but instead of being like a standard like voice amplifier or vocal cord amplifier. His is just auto-tune. And it's wonderful. That was one of the characters that I thought was the least problematic, and
I found him
no
the
problem.
most problematic.
I understand why, but
we'll go into it.
Yeah, I had the least problems with that, and I thought that I would get tired of the auto-tune. I didn't. They were able to just change it up a little bit to keep it fresh every time.
I think his auto-tune worked. I think other elements of his character, the pimp part was the part that bothered me more than the auto-tune part.
Before we get into the pimp part, just general timeline. This was 2008, right, when it released?
Release date, 2011.
2011, excuse me. I think it started development then in 2008. So this was well past the high water mark of auto-tune then.
It was, I guess it was on the backswing.
Yeah.
T-Pain was still roaming the earth.
Right. He wasn't forced into his exile yet, but he wasn't top hat every rap video T-Pain at that point.
I don't think so, no.
Okay. All right.
So it was funny, haha funny at the time.
Right.
And I think at some point they released like a gun that shot dubstep somehow, or maybe that was Saints Row 4, I forget. But that was where we were at. Like the dubstep in this game's menus and things were very funny at the time.
Okay.
And then you get Kinsey Kensington, who is an ex-FBI agent who is a hacker girl who joins your squad. She's pretty cool. I like Kinsey a lot. Kinsey's probably my favorite character. And then you also get Angel de la Muerte, a disgraced masked wrestler who is voiced by disgraced actual wrestler Hulk Hogan. Which, at the time, when this game was made, he was less disgraced.
Yes, more disgraced now.
Much more disgraced now. So now it's more art imitating life than it was at the time. But those are the three members you have, and each of them correspond to gangs that you need to take down. And the first one you go after is the Morning Star. And I think that the Morning Star deal in human trafficking and prostitution, and I found that a lot of the missions with the Morning Star are really hit or miss. Like, I think when you liberate Zemos from sex slavery, and then it culminates, like, there's a bunch of kink shaming when you're raiding a BDSM club, and then, like, the first person you interrogate will say, please beat me up, please hit me.
Yeah, that was a little weird.
And if you hit him, he then does actually get up and, like, beg for more hitting.
Yeah.
And then it ends with you rescuing him and rescuing Zemos, and there's a chase where you're getting chased by people pulling carts.
Yeah, it's like a sex rickshaw sort of thing.
Yeah, it's a sex shaw. I did appreciate that they exploded like normal cars when you shot them up, which was pretty funny. But once you get access to him, some of his missions are like, go find prostitutes for me. I did enjoy when he asked you to pass out flyers for his prostitution ring. We need to print some flyers. That was pretty good. But the culmination of his missions is the Hoboat, which I think is probably the low water mark of the entire game. Would you agree?
I would agree. And I want to talk about why this part of the game made me quit.
It made you quit? Okay, it made me close to quit. But I knew that there were good things coming after the Hoboat, so I did not quit on the spot. Though when playing this, my wife got up and left in the middle of it, and I was like, yes, this is gross. Yeah. I'm going to get through this level. So the setup is Zemos needs, like, you want to disrupt the Morning Star's source of women to exploit. And so you go to a boat where they have women in shipping containers, and you drive onto this boat, you get there, you start opening shipping containers, and there are 3 shipping containers to open. 2 of them have sex toys in them, and then the third one has actual human beings in it, begging for safety, begging for you to free them. And they keep, they throw a few enemies at you, you take them down, you keep, freeing women.
They're in weird costumes, though, in the shipping containers.
Yeah, they're
in the weird, sexy, like, mail-order costumes, but
they're in stripper
that's how
outfits.
They were shipped?
Yeah.
That doesn't seem practical, one.
But as you're near these shipping containers, you can hear them begging for freedom and salvation.
Yeah.
Not in like a tongue-in-cheek sort of way. It's not played up as a joke at least when they're saying stuff. Now, Zemos, as you're freeing them, is like, these bitches need to be in our help. They need our help. And I'm like, that's, not a really appropriate. I can't wait to turn tricks with these girls. No, Zemos, not the time, Zemos. And then once you've finally freed all of them, then you need to evacuate them off of the boat. And a helicopter comes, and you have to force them all into a shipping container, and the helicopter picks them up and flies them away. One of the women is dangling from the edge of the shipping container because, they're prostitutes, so isn't it hilarious? One of them might die. Ha 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 ha, these women in sex slavery. And once you've saved all of them, you get to make a choice. You get a choice.
Yeah, this is where the moral element of the game becomes so important.
Yeah, here's the moral choice. The moral choice is, do you sell the women into sex slavery, back into the same sex slavery that you freed them from, or do you enslave them for your own sex slavery ring? There's no third choice.
That's it.
So I chose to add them to my gang because long-term money was better than short-term money. But the whole time this was happening, I just wondered how the fuck this was allowed to be put into a game. Like, who thought it was a good idea? Who thought it was funny?
Who does this serve, I think, is an equally disturbing question, right? Like, who, even if, like, this made it into the game, on the basis of what audience?
Yeah, who is looking for the power fantasy where you enslave a bunch of women begging for freedom?
Yeah.
Let me respond in this way because it happens in other areas of media. Like, there's in this game, like, different scenes, different acts, for example. And I mean, acts like in a play. And these big arcs of fight the people that do the prostitution and sex crimes, fight the people that do the gambling, drugs, and guns, fight the people that do the cybercrime. They could have been narratively done in any order, but sorry, not like in the game, but like if you were making the game, like you could have reordered them, right? But typically, the overt sexual stuff happens as one of the first parts of the game. Sure. It's really common that if there's going to be a list of like the sins to go through, the sex one happens really early. It actually happened in Persona. That was one of the major themes in lots and lots of animes. And again, anime is sort of criticized for
it's
depicting
got its own baggage.
Yeah, it has its own baggage for depicting female characters in a weird way. But there's going to be a lot of times in like the first 3 episodes of an anime where there's like a scantily clad female scene, and it could be a character that is just like a completely core storyline character that has no overly sexualized background.
After that,
great example is Faye Valentine from Cowboy Bebop. When the episode Honky Tonk Woman starts, which is the introduction of that character, she's like in her like most scantily clad state because they had to show some skin to introduce this character and make it okay. Much later in the story, she gets like fully like she gets her own great narrative and she's not naked half the time. But it's common for the sex part to be early in the game because they kind of have to get that flesh as like an attractive thing for the audience first, then they'll hook you in with the good story later. I don't like that it has to be like that.
I don't think it has to be like that. 2, my problem is not that they went with the Morningstar first, it's how they did it.
Yeah,
like
me too.
If you had the hobo level and you had a choice, sell them back into slavery or free them, and if you sell them back into slavery, like there's this big reward, but the other one there's no reward and you can fucking sleep at night. That would be a choice, Or what if you just don't have that level? Or what if like your character who is cavalier is not cavalier in this one specific circumstance? Because a lot of the other moments of extreme violence, the crimes that they're perpetrating, usually they seem to be either against an enemy gang. They're not generally against innocent people, or at least like the insurance fraud or destruction missions. They are so gamey that they are absurd. Right. They are distanced in that way. Whereas this mission is so explicit and so one-off. There's nothing else like it. that it just jumps out like a sore thumb. It sticks out like a sore thumb.
Go ahead.
Yeah, just this is a quick point. There's an obvious way to do this better too, right? So like you start with rescuing a pimp from his own sex slavery, basically, right?
Yes.
Why not just do a narrative turn there? Oh, this pimp, having gone through, I'll just use the term to art, having gone through what his hoes have gone through, has now reformed. And he chooses, after rescuing these women, to set them free, to help them on the way. Give them a gun. Let them join in the fight against their previous oppressors.
And you do that when you finally take over the Morningstar's base of operation. You basically go through their basement, freeing prostitutes who are in cages, and they join you and they take down all of the people who had enslaved them. That's actually a fairly empowering moment. It's the mission right before this one, for goodness sake.
Like, just do it then.
Or do it both times.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like
that was okay. It's
and then you get character development with, what's the guy's name again?
Zemos.
He develops. He becomes something more than just an auto-tuned pimp.
No, instead, this mission happens and then he's gone.
Yeah.
This is basically the last thing you do with Zemos in this game, for the most part.
Well, I mean, he's still there. He just he jumps in for like auto-tune dialogue every once in a while, but that's all he really needs to be there for.
Yeah, it's probably the background.
It's probably for the better, because if he were in the foreground still doing this stuff, he sort of just turns into a silent behind the scenes money factory. And again, that in and of itself is kind of further aggravating the problem, that it's just, don't even worry about it. We have this steady flow of income. Don't ask where it's coming from. Just sex slavery. No big deal.
Yeah. And I feel like so much of the game is absurd or abstracted by actual game mechanics, that having this moment where you kind of really focus. And it's actually one of the most combat light sections of the game, the Hoboat. The boat itself has almost no enemies on it. You take down a few people, and then it's just kind of wandering around trying to find. I
guess if you're bad, it could have a lot of enemies on it, but like most of the enemies that you could find on the boat have to get onto the boat. So if you just shoot them out of the sky from the chopper, like if you just shoot the boats that try to come board the boat, they'll just all die.
Yeah, but that is at the end of the mission.
Yeah.
When you're at the beginning, when you're trying to find the women.
True. There's basically
the boat is lightly guarded, and then I think you take down like one heavy and then two heavies, and that's the whole of who guards the boat.
I think there's 3 altogether in that level.
It's really that section where you're finding women that I find the most objectionable, because it's just so out of place what Zemos is saying and how serious they play everything, especially when tongue is firmly in cheek for almost the rest of the game. So that's, I think, the low point of the game for me, and it, like, the casual misogyny happens a lot in this game. Just, hoes, bitches, all that sort of stuff is just prevalent because it's a game about crime in this very specific way. But this is the only moment where it jumped out and was like, who's this for, and why is it like this? The other ones I could understand the purpose.
So I want to talk about the why I quit the game here.
Sure.
So I stopped playing the game a little bit after this level. Like this level made me want to quit, but I didn't actually quit until a little bit later, maybe a couple hours. I think I got like 40% of the way through the game. At least the main story. One of the reasons why I quit goes back to the character that I made. So whenever I create a character in a game, I like to create a character that I have some kind of emotional investment in. And I really specifically do not want that character to be me, right? So like if I have the option to customize a character, I just recently played Dark Souls. I wanted to make that character as far from me as possible, because I would like to try to project myself onto something different than I already am. A lot of times I choose to make a female character, as I would become more emotionally invested in a female character than I would a male character. And I knew from listening to the options of the voice actors, when I listened to female voice number 1, I was like, I know that voice. It sounds super familiar. And I looked it up, and it was Laura Bailey, one of my favorite voice actresses. And I decided to make a character that looked kind of like her. And throughout the beginning parts of the game, like the jump out of the plane air fight sequence, that was the high point of the game for me, because I was like, wow, this is great. Like, I feel like I am this like really like strong boss character, and I'm like this dope ass female character, and I'm like, I was really into it.
Yeah, and the game definitely has moments of just badassery all over the place.
Totally. So the airplane sequence was cool. And then when Zemo says, I'm selling you into sex slavery, get in the car, bitch. And then the screen goes black, and the next scene is you being like drugged and naked and stumbling through like a sex dungeon.
Oh yeah, I forgot about the part where you wake up drugged and naked in that.
Yeah. That was like, what the fuck? So like, I care a lot about the character that I made because it was the avatar that I wanted to be, but then I couldn't help think that like I just emulated a real person because I like this voice actress and I've been following her media for years, since like 2014 or 15. Like I've been like a 3 or 4 year fan of this person, and now I just created a character that in many ways emulated them, and now they're a sex slave, and I didn't want any of this. And so shortly after this, like that level turned me off of the game quite a bit. I didn't end up hard quitting until later, and it wasn't something that triggered me to hard quit. It was actually just because the game became very uninteresting to me. But it was a combination of I lost a lot of interest in the game altogether for its boring mechanics. I think the game gets pretty boring, actually. After a while, it's all kind of the same shit after the first 2 or 3 levels. But when I had that bad experience, I was like, well, I don't have any real, like... This game was certainly not on my good list. So once the game got boring, I just didn't want to play it anymore.
That's fair, I think. And I think, fortunately, the game takes a strong turn up after that level.
The next 2 major story arcs, really cool. And
have really high moments.
Like I watched this entire game. I said, I'm not playing this, but I'm gonna go find like a good like Let's Play with commentary, and like I watched all the rest of the game. I've seen every single mission. So like I know what the game's about and how cool it gets later, but like this part here, like I got like, it's like eating a dish and getting sick halfway through. You're just not gonna finish it. You're not gonna finish your plate, and I couldn't here.
Yeah, and I think that the game it starts super strong. The Morningstar section is a lull. And then once Stag gets introduced, I found that really interesting. So Stag is an anti-gang task force that is a paramilitary task force equipped with laser guns and VTOLs,
hover
laser
jets.
tanks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, one quick thing, Gino. Like, we can introduce Stag, but I want to ask: Are we kind of done talking about the Morningstar part?
Just the Morningstar.
Yeah, I actually have a quote here that I want to throw out from one of the developers.
Sure. Yeah.
I was looking into this a little bit and seeing how some other people had responded to this section, and then this is my last thing, and we can move on. But there was an article written in 2014 by Ian Miles Chung. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing the name of this person is reading.
Okay.
Well, anyway, I'm not citing this for his particular work, but there is a quote from the developer, and I wanted to cite the person who made the article. Okay. So this is a quote from that article, and the rest of the article is not that important, but this quote from the developer, Steve Jaros, is the creative director of Saints Row, had the following quote in response to the game receiving some negative feedback to how it portrayed females in the game, and particularly that scene. The quote is, and I'm going to get all the parts that are in quotes, so it's not a solid block of text, but all the parts that were quoted. This is something that we should all be better at, he said. Yes, the original Saints Row is listed here, and they're referring to a list of games that are like against like women in. There was like some kind of list. He said, yes, the original Saints Row is listed in this list. Yes, it should be. And then he elaborated further and said, I think that we shouldn't be portraying senseless, abused women, and I think that if I could go back and hop in a time machine, I would have done some things differently. I think it's fair to be called out on your shit. I think that it's a sad man that can never be self-reflective. I think that we tried to go and carry ourselves with respect and try to respect sexuality and respect gender as much as we can, and sometimes we fail. But hopefully we'll do better and continue to get better.
Okay. Yeah, and I think that makes sense.
So, like, yeah. I know that the quote itself is a little bit vanilla, but I feel better knowing that somebody responded at least this was probably a little bit too far.
But that's not the important piece, right? The important piece isn't remorse. I mean, it is, right? Don't get me wrong. Remorse here is important because they did something wrong. But the interesting question is, okay, why did this happen in the first place? Like, what was the thought process that led to this outcome?
I think your question, Pete, is who is being aimed at with this media?
Yeah.
Like, who are we trying to satisfy a need? Like, who's got the need to have a sex dungeon experience in their gameplay that has all these female slaves? And I think we did not see any. Did we see any male sex slaves?
Not that Zemos.
Zemos was probably the only one.
And some of the people driving the pony carts.
Safe Word, the sex club.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, and I don't. So I think one of the possible explanations is when you finish this game, there's in the credits a bunch of pictures of the developers in the studio standing in front of, standing with funny outfits and stuff. And I just thought I would count how many women there were in the pictures, and it was 11 that I counted. I could have miscounted, could have missed one or two, but
out of how many pictures would you say?
I mean, out of the picture, there's at least 20 pictures, I'd guess, and most pictures have at least 2 people in them. So
10 out of 50 at the very least?
No, it was more like 11 out of 100,
Damn.
I'd guess. Something like that. It was probably around 10%, if not fewer.
Since it was a pretty big game, so it probably had a large. Yeah. I mean, it probably had a decently large dev team.
Yeah. Now the dev team, I think those pictures were only of Volition, and obviously there were people at the different publishers and localization teams across the world. But when it came to the decision making in this game specifically, it seemed like not a lot of ladies were involved in some of the input.
I think that's a safe guess.
And I think that's an easy explanation. You had a bunch of guys who thought it was funny and no one in the room to say, hey, that's actually not cool.
Yeah,
very few people in the room
not funny.
To tell them it wasn't necessarily great. So I think that this is a thing that, and I don't think that Saints Row 4 I haven't played it, but from what I've seen of it, I think it dodges most of these issues. But after this section with the Morning Star, I think the game really picks up. And the introduction of Stag, it was surprisingly good satire, I thought. So there's a memorial bridge that one of the senators from wherever this state is supposed to be, wherever the city is supposed to be, she has a bridge dedicated to her late husband who died, I guess, fighting gangs. And as she is dedicating the bridge, you get chased by all these rival gangs onto this bridge, and then they blow it up with RPGs. And she dedicates herself to getting military force or some sort of anti-gang unit into Steelport, and that initiative is Stag. They've got laser cannons, they're heavily funded, and once they take over, it is all of the police get way harder. It's way worse when you get caught by police because Stag has fucking laser cannons and hover tanks. But once that happens, the militarized police come, and their first press conference has a mission accomplished banner over them, which it's the very first mission, and they haven't done anything yet, and they've got a mission accomplished banner, which I thought on point, moi. Then when they are in their press conference, one of the reporters says, how long will Stag be staying in Steelport, as if Steelport was an enemy nation?
Oh, no. I think the word was occupying.
Yeah, an occupying force as if Steelport was an enemy nation. And the Stag officer in question responds by saying there was a girl whose boyfriend was in a gang, and he ran her over and laughed the whole way. Now, if you were that girl's mother, how long would you want me in your town? Or how much would you want me holding back?
That's
and then everyone shuts up and starts clapping. And I'm like, wow. This game came out in 2011. This was pre-Black Lives Matter. This was the larger conversation on militarized police, though post the Bush administration, so not post all of it. The mission accomplished banners were totally from that era. But I found a lot of the rhetoric to be even more spot on now than it was maybe at the time. So I found maybe it was even more effective satire. And some of the guy saying we need to use shock and awe to take out these miscreants. There's some news clippings, and like in the crawl. There's a crawl that says kids employing illegal immigrants at lemonade stand. Nightblade, who is this crappy vampire show. There's a line that says Nightblade says it's okay to rat out your neighbors, which I thought, again, real spot on. Then you get martial law, and the local newscaster ends her newscast by saying, "This is your military-approved news." So all of that was really on point, and those first few missions with Stag I thought were really good as satire. Now, the game, I think, after this point, kind of abandons all of it and just goes straight back to being absurd, power trip, power fantasy sort of stuff. But I thought for those few missions, those few moments, I was like, okay, this game has something to say.
Yeah,
on top of being fun.
I was hoping for a media critique to develop, because you have this sort of, you can see this tension, in actual real world media, right? Where it's like you have shows like Gangland, or sort of, just this general fascination with this gang underworld, right? This sort of gang culture that comes into clash with this sort of other media ideology that's, this sort of shock and awe. Gangs are they are a menace, but I don't want to describe this. It's sort of a clash between, all right, we're fascinated, and Saints, they build up this media empire. They create movies. They have shows. Actors come out and see them. But at the same time, there's this whole separate apparatus working to demonize criminality, to put it in a certain light, such that militarization of the police force is necessary. And there's so much opportunity, sort of interesting juxtaposition between these two fascinations we have. But like you said, like, it doesn't really go there. It's just sort of, hey, let's get more nukes and turn this up to 12 from 11. Like,
they definitely go from 11 to 12.
Yeah, and they definitely, like, the newscaster, I forget her name, Jane Valderrama. She gets an interview with Kilbane at one point, the leader of the Luchadors, and she's basically interviewing this gang leader. She doesn't necessarily know he's a gang leader, but
I mean, his name's Kilbane. Bit of a giveaway.
Yeah, I mean, he's a masked wrestler. They have weird names. The dude on your side is Angel de la Muerte.
That's true.
But when she's interviewing him, she's basically interviewing the leader of a gang, like, with gang detail guarding her as security, and she's not questioning it at all, because she's got an exclusive interview.
Yeah.
And the exclusive interview is more important than everything else. And then when you break in, she's like, "Oh, you guys again. So sorry I was interviewing this rival gang leader. Are we still cool?"
Like, who was it? So who was it that Sean Penn got that interview with?
Oh, El Chapo.
Yeah. It's like the same sort of deal. Like, it's just like this odd fascination with criminality.
Yeah. This person is terrible, but they're a good interview, and they lead an interesting life, so it's cool.
So let's send Sean Penn's ass down there.
And, I mean, the game has a lot – like, there are people who will run up – one of the things you can collect is autographs and pictures, like photo sessions. There will be people on the street who will run up to you and ask for your autograph, to the point where in one of the missions I was doing, there was a mission where it was like take out a bunch of gangs, and in this war zone that I had to clear out these gangs with, there was a person who wanted my autograph who was just standing on a street corner while the police and gangs were at war. Like, there were tanks everywhere, and there's just no human life outside of gangs and cops and me. And then there's just this icon on one of the corners of photo op. And I'm like, well, I want to collect that photo op, but I'm probably going to die. And I think if I go over there, I'm going to draw a lot of enemy fire, and I think this dude's going to get killed. So maybe I should just hope that he doesn't get killed, and I'll get that once this is all past us. And I think the next missile that got fired blew him up.
Yeah, I wish I had my notes in front of me here, and I feel bad I didn't bring my notebook home from work, where I hope my boss isn't listening, where I read all my theory. But I think there's an interesting thing to be done here with Foucault's conception of power. So if you know anything about Foucault, he's a French philosopher, and he wrote basically a history of the prison system called Discipline and Punish. Great book. You guys should read it if you hadn't. Listeners, my next plug. Last week was Judith Butler. This week's Foucault's Discipline and Punish.
Foucault's weird.
You just probably don't. You don't like the Continentals.
No, not that much. I'm waiting to the analytics.
Yeah. All right. I like him. He's more of a historian really than a philosopher. But regardless,
I'll give you that.
yeah, he talks about power, and he contrasts power with sort of judicial power, right? Judicial power is the law, right? It's purely restrictive. But his insight is that these restrictive laws and sort of power in general works with multiple valences, right? So insofar as it outlaws criminality, it also creates it. It gives rise to it, right? So he uses this a lot, and he's discussing sexuality. Power both restricts and creates. And I think here, when you talk about sort of this stag stuff coming in, sort of addressing gangs, it goes to that idea of power as productive, as creating the parameters within which it can operate. And here you see that, right? Sort of Saints Row is able to flourish based on this judicial law that's seeming to be purely restrictive, but actually creates the exact conditions for this deviance to flourish.
Yeah. Many of your missions with Stag involve you going to one of their bases and stealing their shit, and then you have access to this crazy piece of technology that you shouldn't have access to, like a VTOL or a laser tank. And them constantly showing up suppresses other gangs. It gives you access to more power, and it creates a flashpoint where all of a sudden you're no longer the wildest thing going on in the city.
Yeah, some of the insights basically is what seems to be outside the system is always already adopted within the system, right? Third Street Saints aren't operating outside the system. They're just another aspect that's been incorporated into this even larger system.
Yes. And that's really cool. I hadn't even thought about that. But
Foucault,
the Stag
man.
stuff, Foucault. Once Stag gets introduced, they have very quickly become just another faction. They basically take the place of the Morningstar. And you kind of have these two parallel lines where you're taking down Stag and taking on the Syndicate. And I think you basically have to take down a few other members of the Syndicate before you can really get to taking it to Stag. But I think the Decker section is probably the strongest section of the game.
They're the hackers, right?
They're the hackers.
Right.
So Matt Miller is their leader. He's kind of a shitty hacker who's voiced by Yuri Lowenthal, who I think he voiced Luca from Bayonetta. He's also very prolific.
This character looks like they're from like some emo band too. They got the eyeliner and everything,
and the neon and the tie,
and like the hair dye as well.
It's like Goth-tron.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's My Chemical Romance meets Daft Punk.
Yeah, actually, that's really close.
But their gang, like, you get to hack and get into their quote-unquote Usenet, and when you get into their Usenet the first time, or I guess it's, first you have to, like, steal a chair that lets you get into their Tron world, because apparently their gang is constantly on this weird Tron world. And Kinsey needs you to steal this stuff so that you can break in. And once you've broken into the Usenet, first you load as a toilet, which is great. Your avatar becomes a toilet. And then you become a blow-up doll for a second. And then you get to be a regular, like, polygonal-looking character with basically a Mega Man blaster. And that Mega Man blaster is pretty awesome. Yeah. You take down enemies in there, and then the game does some interesting, like, emulating lag spikes and slowdown and I think speed up. So they'll screw with your connection, basically, which I thought was a nice third wall kind of breaking thing. You also get fourth wall. There are always three walls. Nice fourth wall breaking thing. They also turn the game into a text adventure, which is pretty cool. I like the text adventure section. And you finally get to take on Matt Miller, and he's a gigantic robot dragon-looking thing, and you fight him, which is pretty cool. So I thought that whole section was solid.
Yeah, it was nice. That's, we're getting back to the tone that's appropriate for this game.
Yeah.
It's
extreme
absurd and funny and absurd and lots of action and crazy stunts. And I think if I had gotten to this part of the game organically, instead of waiting and viewing it from a non-player perspective, I might have enjoyed this part of the game the most.
Mm-hmm. I think so.
Yeah, it's really fun. At this point, the enemies haven't heightened so much that getting around becomes kind of a pain in the ass, because at a certain point, like Stag and the different enemies you run into become so powerful that if you cross a line and draw attention, draw aggro from one of them, it becomes a real frickin' pain in the ass just to get around.
Yeah.
But at this point, you're still more powerful, like way more powerful than everything else. And then you get to the luchador section, which the luchadors are actually, I think, the least difficult of the gangs to deal with, because they're specialized. Every gang has a specialized unit, and the luchador's specialized unit is just a guy with a grenade launcher, a really good grenade launcher. So taking him down is pretty easy. The Deckers thing is a girl with skates that can like warp around with dual Uzis, and she's a pain in the ass.
What bothered me about the luchador section, though, I think this is what bothered me the second most, and it was a distant second, but still. So you have to participate in this fictional. It's not fictional. It's basically a game show, a fighting game show called Murder Brawl. What is it? 32?
31.
31. Murder Brawl XXI. It's in Roman numerals, and I think there's some interesting parallels, especially like Gino said, the game becomes even more prescient the more we know about CTE and football, and sort of how football could be.
I'm sorry.
Chronic traumatic encephalopathy.
Ooh, he had it off the top of his head.
I did. It's a lot like dementia pugilistica. So it's like the brain damage.
Like boxers.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm. I know that one.
Yeah, it's the brain damage that comes from repeated blows to the head, basically. And when you're in Murder Brawl, they are constantly referencing stuff like that.
Yeah. So that's not. I think that's firmly in the realm of satire. That's not the part that bothers me. The part that bothers me, in order to get into Murder Brawl XXI, you have to kill off all the other luchadors who could have participated. And had these been, gang members or evildoers of some sort, sure. If this is a video game, those people die. But these are just sort of bystanders, right? You're wiping out civilians so you can further your mission. Which again, like we've talked about, points where this game becomes a little too cavalier. I think that was one a little bit as well. Kidnap the guys, lock them in a room. Sure, I'll deal with that. But just wipe them out so you can be in Murder Brawl 31. I don't know.
Yeah, and the way you take them out is also especially. I feel like it's almost voyeuristic, because you take control of their vehicles, whatever they're driving, and then you will hear them pleading for their freaking out and pleading for their lives as their car is driving itself off a bridge or something. And as that's happening, it can be a little much, especially the first person you have to take out, because you have to run over a bunch of people first he just snapped those crazy wrestlers and their brain damage. And then drive him into a gas station and blow it up. Yeah. And I thought that it was it walked the line for me. For me, it was still on the side of, this is kind of funny and kind of cool as a mission, but it was definitely, it made me think is this working, or is this a little too much?
Yeah, I said, distant second, but.
Yeah, distant second. This one, I think, walked the line a little bit better. And then once you get to Murder Brawl is pretty great.
Yeah,
Murder Brawl is a pretty great level. You get to wrestle, basically, and then you can choose whether to unmask this dude, or he gives you the Apoca Fist, which is this pair of fists that just blow people up when you punch them.
Basically Hulk hands, but with dynamite in them.
Yep. And the climax of the Stag mission is you take down a plane, and you get access to this sonic boom gun that blows people up, and then that, unfortunately, in the plane, there's also, zombie gas.
Yeah.
And zombies get unleashed into the city, and when you have to take out the zombies, you get enlisted by the mayor of Steelport, Burt Reynolds.
Played by
Burt Reynolds.
Burt Reynolds.
Which again, they got Kanye's music, and somehow they got Burt Reynolds involved in this too.
Hulk Hogan plays the wrestler.
How did they get all these people?
They did a really good job, man.
They had a top dollar cast.
I'm saying. I mean, maybe Hulk Hogan needed the money. This was pre Gawker lawsuit.
Yeah. But man, the when Burt Reynolds got the reveal, I was like, okay,
That was good.
And I choose to believe that this exists in the Archer universe as well, and that
Oh,
Burt
like
Reynolds
Burt
is
yeah.
he's the connective tissue. Like after he dates Archer's mom, he then goes on to become the mayor of Steelport. But you can choose at the end of that mission with the zombies. You can choose to either get zombie homies or Burt Reynolds as a homie, and I chose what is that choice?
Yeah, Burt Reynolds every time.
Burt Reynolds every time. The mayor. When we meet the mayor, you're gonna be cool. I'll do whatever I want. Oh my God, it's fucking Burt Reynolds.
That was a great reveal.
Yeah, so I think game, great. And then when you take on Stag and go onto their base as like you get plastic surgery to look like the leader of Stag. I thought that mission was pretty funny to save Shondi. The mission with where you kidnap Trey Burke, not Trey Burke.
No, it's definitely not Trey Burke.
The Nightblade actor.
It's something Burke, yeah.
Something Burke. Alex Burke?
Sure.
I think. When you kidnap him and you have to dress up as the Bloody Canoness and the Cardinal, I thought that's a pretty weird mission. It was fine. I guess the last mission in the game that I definitely want to talk about is the last proper mission.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that it was a pretty weak ending because it's basically clear out these 3 areas, kill a bunch of dudes, and then take down a valuable target at the location. And I think it really revealed how thin the combat is when you don't have a good vehicle.
Yeah.
Just killing people with the guns you've amassed is not that fun. And you have to do a lot of it in that mission.
And this is like the when your core gameplay idea or your core not mechanic really, but when ridiculousness is your go-to strategy, you can see how difficult that makes the climax. Like when everything's been ridiculous, where do you go? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, when you compare that to the mission where you're shooting down a spy plane with your laser plane, like this mission where you're just going to beat up street thugs with RPGs, it's a little bit. But after that, you do get the section where they play I Need a Hero, and you get to choose whether to save Shondi or kill Killbane. I chose to save Shondi because, as ZP said, I'm not a tool.
Yeah, I think it was the obvious choice. I mean, you already lost Johnny Gat at the very beginning. You got to protect your boys.
Yep.
Or in this case, girls?
Yep.
Your crew, I should say. Let me use a non-gendered word. Good catch. Yeah, your crew.
Squad.
It is it is the most juvenile moment when you save Shondi too, because she's being held as a human shield, and you have to throw jarred farts, at the person who's holding her so that you will let her go and you can get clear shots, which is just of course, Saints Row. That is of course the way this ends. And I think that's pretty much everything I had to say. Though I did like in Murder Brawl that they play You're the Best Around.
The best around.
Great licensed music in this game.
Yeah, really.
Great choices.
The soundtrack's probably worth getting.
Oh, yeah.
Great choices. It's not Comedy Central. The Adult Swim channel is pretty solid on the radio too. They do some good bits on there. I think the layout of Steelport. Steelport's a pretty fun city to drive around in and just be in.
Yeah.
Yeah, the cars are cool too. You get some nice vehicles.
Yeah, I had some wrap up thoughts that didn't really fit in anywhere else. So I think that the game presented itself as a thrill ride, and it executed that well. So I think it deserves points for presenting a very clear, marketed experience. You know what you're getting yourself into from the first minute you turn on Saints Row, and it delivers just that, a thrill ride. Mm-hmm. Yes, we've already talked about the problems in the first third of the game with the Morningstar segment. We won't revisit those, but that was a huge issue for me. It ultimately made me want to quit the game. And other things that I found were really, really elegant, like the character interactions, those small like dialogues, and when they sing songs together, poke fun at each other. Great. That was awesome. One part that I think the game was really lazy on was like enemy creation and enemy generation. There was like 5 enemy models for like the first half of the game. There was like the black guy bad dude, the white guy bad dude, and like the girl bad dude who was like all the male bad guys were like in typical like gang outfits, like I don't know, maybe like a sports coat and like a tie, and all the girls were in crop tops, pumps, and like cutoffs with like fishnet leggings in a heavily armed gunfight.
I thought there were a couple like lycra cat suits at some point too.
Yeah, just weird.
Maybe I just wasn't.
I don't remember.
I mean, I'm not really talking about their costume so much, but it seemed like there were just a huge like lack of attention to detail for the enemy character models. There were tons of background characters in like the BDSM club, safe word or whatever it was called.
Safe word, yeah.
Yeah. There were tons of character models in that background, and there was a whole other commentary on what you do with background characters, and then it was pretty much in that case, again, it's kind of inappropriate to have all the sexual victims as background characters, as decoration in the mise-en-scène. But like, that's a whole different can of worms. There was variety there, but you would fight the exact same bad guy character model 3,000 times until you get a new character model, which is like the big hulking dude, and then you fight that guy like 50 times, and then there was some laziness in some of the parts of this game too.
I think the luchadors and the luchadors are monogender. There are no women in the luchadors.
I don't think there are.
The Deckers, the special unit in the Deckers, is a lady, but otherwise the Deckers are almost monogender too, which is at least the Morningstar in a way are equal opportunity hirers in their crime syndicate.
I will say, just I know like actual empirical evidence for this, which is based on Gangland. It seems like most gangs are monogender.
Yeah, well, it depends. Some of the gang adjacent things, like you may call like a motorcycle club, if they're more, I guess, rough around the edges motorcycle club, they will typically have male and females. But again, there's a problem there because typically the female members of the motorcycle club will be maybe of a lower order, like a lower rank and file.
For a whole bunch of reasons, it doesn't seem like a good life. You just put it that way.
Yeah. Some other areas where I think the game was lazy, and I think this ultimately, I mean, maybe the game had to pay this cost. Maybe this is like a cost-benefit analysis of how this game is I guess trying to present itself. But when you take what is originally like from an architectural structure, a Grand Theft Auto style game,
right,
where your primary way to interact with the environment is stealing cars, shooting guns, and like
murdering.
Yeah, like murdering things, right? You get that at the start of the game, and that part of the game never develops at all. Yeah. You get some different weapons, but it's the exact same song and dance for the entire game. Bayonetta, our game that we played recently with a lot of the same kind of action elements, like it at least had a way to develop and change up its combat sequence. You could change different weapon combinations. You could get different abilities. Most of your abilities in this game just helped you not die. That was a very passive and boring way to progress the game. That was the last straw that made me quit. The Morningstar part, like, took me 95% of the way to quitting. And then the fact that the game got just really boring, and I was like, I bet I know how this entire game is going to play out. More guns, bigger guns, enemies with more health and bigger guns, and then that's it.
Yeah, and it's kind of a shame because as you unlock more homies, you can't actually call backup in most story missions. Mm-hmm. They won't come. So if you're not just tooling around in the city, some of the coolest things you unlock are homies that will come and back you up. And you hardly get a chance to use them if you stay mainline.
I want there to be like an assist button where like Zemos comes in and like bow staffs his auto-tune cane. Like that would be dope. Have some kind of variety. It wasn't there.
Some of the different homies like are not just different character models. Like they have different abilities. I think Nightblade has a sword, and Oleg like picks up dudes and throws them. Mm-hmm. Like there's a noticeable difference for some of them, and it would have been nice to have actually exploited it.
Yeah, any sort of combat variety by any means would have been nice.
Yeah. So I think that's pretty much it. At the end of the game, you go to Mars and you make a movie, which is pretty funny.
It's pretty sick.
It was pretty cool. I like that headshots in space are all one-hit kills because they can't breathe.
Yeah.
But I think that's it for Saints Row the Third. Any other closing thoughts, Pete? Or
No, I mean, I think we hit it, right? If you can get through the lowest points of this game, and they are low, there's fun to be had. But
I think
you got to find it.
My final point is a tip to get through the lowest points of the game. Play with the zombie voice.
the zombie voice is pretty great.
Because it actually deletes all of your character's dialogue and replaces it with grumbles and groans in a zombie voice. But like the other characters will still talk to you the exact same way. So while that doesn't delete the scenes of sex slavery and everything, it just it puts some it will distract you from all that bad stuff. It's like, it's weird to say that that's like the spoonful of sugar that helps the medicine go down, but like that zombie voiceover will just like distract you from what's ostensibly the shittiest part of this game.
It makes it more ridiculous.
Yeah, it adds a new distracting layer of ridiculousness.
Yeah. You add the ridiculousness to all of the situations. So the ones where the script didn't do it, you get to do it by being the ridiculousness. Be the change you want to see in the world is basically what I'm saying. So, Pete, I believe it is your turn to pick the game.
It is. So
what we got?
We've had a lot of ridiculousness past 2 weeks, so I'm going to pull it back a little bit, something a little bit more low-key, a little bit more laid back. And at the time we're recording this, so I don't know if this will help our listeners at all, but it's half off for the next 15 hours. So heads up there. But we are going to play a slightly old game, but I'm excited about it. A Story About My Uncle. Platform on Steam.
I don't know anything about this, but this
it's sort of like it's a little bit shorter. It's like a story-driven sort of platformer. Like I said, a little low-key, a little laid back, and half off this week, so why not?
I think we certainly need a little bit of low-key and a little bit of laid back.
Something a little different vibe.
Plus, I'm not going to say what I'm picking next, but I will probably also pick a more relaxed game, as in the next couple weeks here we got to start preparing for some events in April.
Sure.
Yes,
so,
the community endurance run is on its rapidly approaching.
We're at
preparing some
the
stuff.
2-month mark. We're not going to talk about any of the cool stuff yet, but we're approximately 2 months out.
Get hyped. Countdown
and
begins.
I'll just tell you, I'm already preparing cool stuff. Gino's already preparing cool stuff. But
I'm starting to prepare cool stuff.
I'm going to be picking games that are going to be a little bit easier to talk about, easier to talk through, because I'll be spending a big chunk of my time preparing cool stuff for this charity. So,
yeah, and I'm fine. The next game I'm going to pick is Kirby 64.
Oh God, I know love that game.
Good pick.
Oh,
that was the other game I was going. Those were the two options. Was Saints Row the Third. When you guys said ridiculous, I'm like, okay, it was going to be Saints Row or Kirby 64. So
the Crystal Shards one.
Yeah.
Oh man, my jam! Oh, I'm so excited.
Powers and stuff. That's good. All right, but next week though, or next time I should say, A Story About My Uncle.
Cool.
All right. Thank you, listeners. Remember, if you want to get in touch with the show, you can do so at thatpinguino, at Deep Listens Pod on Twitter, or deeplistens.libsyn.com. We've got comment sections, or deeplistenspodcast@gmail.com. Thank you so much, Billy.
Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. I'm excited for the next couple weeks of podcasts. I'm excited for what's coming up in the next few months with the show. I'd say Saints Row was a very exciting game and worth picking up. It's definitely a AAA title that does cool things. I had some problems with it, but ultimately there's a lot of fun to be had in the form of over-the-top ridiculousness.
Thank you, Pete.
Always a pleasure, everybody. I think everything about Saints Row the Third needs to be said, has been said. So I'll just say, read your Foucault. He's probably going to come up again, and you only have to read the first volume of History of Sexuality. So that's not that much. Along with his other stuff, but you don't have to read the other 2 volumes.
And eat your Wheaties.
And eat your Wheaties. And work your brain and body.
Until next time, peace!